Hello there, and welcome to Exercise Your Thumbs. Because I was busy last weekend, unfortunately I didn't get to put out the roundup for the 21st of March, so I'm going to do the 21st and the 28th in one go. So sorry for that, it was just one of those weekends and I couldn't get around to recording this. So it's going to be a little bit longer than normal because we've got 2 weeks worth of stuff to talk about. So without further ado, we will go through the 21st of March, games released on or around the 21st of March 2014. The first of these is probably, there are 2 big titles that were released this day. The first is Infamous Second Son for the PlayStation 4. This is a PlayStation 4 exclusive and is the 3rd game in a series of games that first appeared on the PlayStation 3, Infamous and Infamous 2 being the predecessors very originally. Infamous is a superhero game. You start off as a young 24-year-old character called Delsin who gains certain powers, and the mechanic of the game is such that it's third person, so you can see the character. You run around a version of Seattle, either battling the bad guys or being a bad guy yourself. Infamous has a morality system that allows you to either be a hero or a villain. It's a pretty binary choice. You can either choose to be good or bad. It affects very mildly what happens in the story and also affects the way that your powers develop. Gorgeous looking game, strong plotting, excellent acting. It's been given a 16 rating by Peggy for reasons of realistic looking violence. And I played some of this, and for the first time ever, the game that's being played underneath this is one of the games I'm reviewing. The footage you're looking at is from Infamous Second Son. It does have realistic looking violence in it. At the same time also there's some very mild bad language. Nothing beyond, you know, your simple basic 4-letter words, not the strong ones, the less strong ones. But violence is the main thing because there is an awful lot of hitting people with stuff. Next we've got Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. This is a title that's been released for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Xbox One and PS4. It is basically a precursor to the Phantom Pain, which is the big Metal Gear Solid title expected next year. This is a short title. It takes about 2.5 hours, I think, to clear the first time we play it, with lots of replay. Metal Gear Solid is a franchise that's been around for a very long time, I think around about 20 years. It's a stealth action game. So you play a character called Solid Snake, and the idea is that you creep around the place and you either quietly assassinate people to get where you need to be, or avoid combat entirely. So this game is quite strategic. It's played in the third person way. You can choose to go in guns blazing, but the likelihood is you're going to get killed. So this is a game about stealth and planning. It has been given an 18 rating for bad language and violence. So it says extreme violence, violence towards defenseless people, and strong language are the reasons that it's got that 18 rating. Next up is Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z for the Xbox 360, PS3 and PC. This has got an 18 rating again for violence and bad language. It's a slash 'em up. It's a game where you run around with a big samurai sword and chop people into tiny pieces. It's very graphic. There's lots of gushing blood. It's done in a reasonably cartoon fashion, but it is very strong. It's been given that 18 rating for extreme violence and strong language by Peggy. We've also got The Witch and the 100 Knight. This is for the PlayStation 3 only. There has been no Peggy rating put out for this that I can find. I've looked on Amazon and it's got a 16 rating. Now, having a look at the footage, and I will link you to some gameplay footage when I upload the video. It is a Japanese RPG. It is about running around the place and hitting stuff. It's very cartoony in terms of the way the violence is done, so I'd imagine there is moderate violence in it. The 16 is probably more to do with potentially language, but also mild sexual content, because if you look at the box art for it, you can see that the main character is a very scantily dressed buxom young woman, which is quite usual for a lot of particular Japanese role-playing games. So although there's nothing official, my assumption from watching the gameplay is that this is being given a 16 rating because potentially mild language, violence against non-realistic characters, and potentially some sexual content. Next up, and the final launch for the 21st of March, is Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD Remaster for the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita. Final Fantasy X was released on the PlayStation 2 quite some time ago. It was very well received and has become quite iconic in the Final Fantasy series. X2 was X-2 was a sequel to that. Wasn't received quite so well. But what's happened is they've given it a dust up, they've remastered the visuals, they've remastered the sound, and they've released it for PS3 and PlayStation Vita. It's a Japanese role-playing game. It's turn-based, so basically you have a character with a certain set of skills, and you will apply those skills, and there'll be a timer before you can apply those skills again. It's been given a 12 rating because realistic-looking violence towards non-human-looking characters, non-realistic-looking violence towards human characters, mild bad language, violence causing minor injury only. It's a great game. It's one of my personal favourites, actually. But the mild bad language, I don't remember mild bad language when I played it a few years ago. But if that's what it's there for, I'd imagine that is, again, very low-level 4-letter words. But that's a 12 rating for language and violence. Then we're on to the releases for the 28th of March. The first is Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney for the 3DS. This has been given a 12 rating, and it's a puzzle game. Professor Layton I know a lot about because my son has played it on the 3DS or on the DS. It's a puzzle game. Essentially, you will solve crimes by solving basic logic puzzles. They are quite tricky, and I must say that my son played it for the story, and it was mainly my wife and I that had to solve the puzzles, because when he was 7, most of them were beyond him. This has been given a 12 rating. That is more to do with the Phoenix Wright element of the game. I don't know much about Phoenix Wright, but I know it's a slightly more adult thing. He is an attorney who, I think Professor Layton solves the puzzles, and then you have puzzles for Phoenix Wright to kind of put people behind bars once you've kind of got the evidence against them. It's been given that 12 rating for, again, no PEGI rating unfortunately, but looking at Phoenix Wright, the last one that came out for Phoenix Wright, the 12 rating for that one was for non-realistic looking violence towards human characters and mild bad language. Amazon does have it listed as a 12. I've just gone back to a previous Phoenix Wright game to get a sense of why that 12 might be there, because there was nothing official on the PEGI website. Next we have two pretty much similar games, one for the PlayStation 3 and one for the PlayStation Vita. There is an Invizimals, the Alliance for the PlayStation Vita, and Invizimals, the Lost Kingdom for the PlayStation 3. Both of them have had a 7 rating for mild horror, which is one I haven't seen before. That's a spider symbol if you see it on the back of the game box, violence, and online content. What you do with the PlayStation Eye camera or the camera built into the PlayStation Vita, you point the cameras at various parts of your room and it will turn them into little animals that you can then capture, and then very much like a Pokemon game you can breed them and play with them. It's a game that was launched on the PlayStation Portable actually about 7 years ago, so this iteration will be very similar to that. The PEGI rating for the 7 is because non-realistic looking violence towards fantasy characters. Pictures or sounds likely to be scary to young children. The game allows players to interact with other players online. Once you've captured your animal, you train it up, and then you can pitch it against someone across the internet. So that's Invizimals, the Alliance for PlayStation Vita, and Invizimals, the Lost Kingdom for PlayStation 3. Got a couple more. There is Deception 4 Blood Ties for the PlayStation 3 and the PS Vita. This again hasn't been given or has a PEGI rating, but there's no description on the PEGI website. Amazon has it listed as a 16. It is a strategy tower defense game, so essentially you will have things attacking you, and what you do is you strategically place traps, so they wander into those traps, and those traps will kill them. So it's been given a 16, I would imagine, for violence. I've seen some gameplay footage, and some of the traps are pretty graphic. Bear traps and spikes falling on people, or that kind of thing. It also has some online content, because I believe what the idea is you can set up traps for your friends or people who are playing online and try and kind of out-strategize them and kill them off with traps first. So that's Deception for Blood Ties. As I always do, if PEGI does release a proper description and it is absolutely totally different than what I've been given, I will update that in the next video. We also have the official Motocross video game, which is for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PC and PS Vita. This has a 3 rating. It is a motorcycle racing game. 3 rating means that PEGI have said is suitable for everyone. They never give any more explanation to that, so the 3 rating means it's just a straightforward racing game and there is nothing in it that's going to be problematic for people who are of a younger age. Then we have Cut the Rope Triple Threat, which is for the Nintendo 3DS. Cut the Rope started as an iOS game, a mobile phone game, where there was a little character that you had to swing over to some food or something, and you had to cut ropes in a particular sequence to make sure he swings to where he needs to go. This has been given a 3 rating. It's a puzzle game, and again, PEGI don't give any more information other than the content of this game is suitable for all persons. That's for the 3DS. Finally, we have for the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One only, Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag Jackdaw Edition. This is the Assassin's Creed 4 that has already been released for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. It was released back in November when the game's consoles were released. This is a version that contains all of the downloadable content. So you've got the main game, which is going to be no different than the one you might have picked up if you have all back in November. But what it has included with it, at the various, I think there is 4 bits of downloadable content, which are extra bits of the game that you can play, which each of which is probably about another 2, maybe 3 hours worth of content. So it's quite a good package in that respect, because to buy the downloadable content individually can be anything from £7 to £12 through either Xbox Live or PlayStation Store. So that's been given an 18 rating. I've played a lot of Assassin's Creed 4. It's a great game, but it is very violent and has some very strong language. So the 18 is for strong language, violence, and online content. And the description is multiple motiveless killing, strong language. This game allows players to interact with others players online. So those are the main things. There is a competitive online game, which is quite unique in the way it's done. So just to recap very quickly, we've got coming out last week, again, sorry I missed that, it was just a very busy weekend, Infamous Second Son with a 16 for violence, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes 18 for swearing and violence, Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z 18 for violence and bad language, The Witch and the 100 Knight, there was no PEGI rating, but with a 16 rating there, I'd imagine that is mild bad language, fantasy violence, and potentially some innuendo or sexual content. Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD Remaster for the PS3 and the PS Vita is a 12 rating for violence and bad language. For the 28th of March, released tomorrow as I'm recording this, Professor Layton vs Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, that is for the 3DS, it's had a 12 rating on Amazon, no specific PEGI rating, but the previous Phoenix Wright game was given a 12 rating because of non-realistically violence towards human characters and some very mild bad language. Invizimals The Alliance and Invizimals The Lost Kingdom for the Vita and the PlayStation 3 respectively are both 7s for mild horror, violence and online content. We have Deception 4 Blood Ties for the PS3 and PS Vita. That's a 16 rated game, no official PEGI rating, but that is likely to be because it is violent and of the online content that it contains. The official Motocross video game is a 3 rating, suitable for everyone, and Cut the Rope Triple Threat for the 3DS is a 3 rated game as well. Finally, for the 28th, the 18 rated Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag Jackdaw Edition, original Assassin's Creed with all of the downloadable content that's been released since it came out, and that is for violence, bad language and online content. So thank you very much for listening. If you found this useful, please like, favourite and subscribe to the channel, and again you can follow us on Twitter and on our Facebook page. I hope you found it informative. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye bye for now.